はじめまして。私はAddValue社の、すみません。はじめまして。私はAddValue社の事業開発副社長と日本マネージャーのハレヴィ・ユヴァルと申します。今日、お忙しいところ、21世紀の産業のためのイスラエルの先端技術のオンラインセミナーに出席するようご時間をお割りいただき、誠にありがとうございます。弊社は10年以上、先端技術を開発したイスラエルの中古企業のため、日本市場にビジネスサポートを活動やっておりますけれども、今回はイスラエルの IT 分野の3つの企業のソリューションのことをご紹介させていただきます。この3つのソリューションには、Firefly Migration 社のデジタルトランスフォーメーション時代に向かって、DB マジ言語に開発されたアプリケーションを大人気の C#.net 言語に自動的に移行するユニークマイグレーションエンジンのソリューション。レコグナイゼーションのプロセス産業、例えば発電所、化学製薬、製紙工場、セメント工場などの操作停止を防ぐために予防性予測分析ソリューション。トラペク社のディセプションに基づく脅威検出するサイバーセキュリティソリューション。そして、メトリック社の専門家はコロナ時代の企業の IT システムを自宅勤務またはオンラインビジネスのため、迅速にシステムアップグレードするという大きな IT チャレンジに関して、現場からの経験のことを共有いただきます。セミナーの時間限定のため、スピーカーは2時分ずつに実写のことと実写のソリューションに関するビジネスミーティングの説明より短い紹介しかできないんですけれども、各講演の後にいくつかの質問にお答えします。それでは、ご質問がありましたら、Zoom の Q&A の機能の方にご質問をお書きいただきましたらとお願い申し上げます。時間次第にできる限り質問に関してはセミナー中にスピーカーがお答えしますけれども、残りの質問に関するまたメールにご回答させていただきます。このセミナーのプレゼンテーションがお役立ちましたら幸いですけれども、どうぞよろしくお願いいたします。今はイスラエル大使館の経済部代表のダニエル・コブラ様に歓迎の言葉のことをお願いいたします。ダニエル、בבקשה。
皆さん、こんにちは。よろしくお願いします。イスラエル大使館経済講師ダニエル・コルバです。Very nice to be here. I'm very happy to open this webinar on behalf of the Israel Economic Mission at the Embassy of Israel in Japan. We are very pleased to be part of this webinar, one of many that we are able to do to give some exposure of Israeli innovation and to do our efforts in promoting Israel-Japan collaborations, especially commercial collaborations. In recent years, there's a very positive momentum in the cooperation between Israel and Japan. Most notably, investment from Japan in Israeli high-tech are rising, even despite the corona and the economic crisis of the past year. There was an increase of 20% in investment from Japan in Israel. And there was an increase of exports from Israel to Japan of trading goods. There are ever more and more Japanese companies establishing their offices in Israel with a specific goal of seeking innovation and partnerships. And this is a very positive trend, and we are very happy that it continues. And today we'll have a chance to hear about some very interesting companies, and I look forward for the discussions. Should any of the audience today would like to have some meetings with the companies, please let us know. We'll be more than happy to facilitate that. And we would like to thank you for being on the webinar today and wish you for your continued support. Today is not an easy time in Israel. As you know, we are experiencing some very difficult times with over 1,200 rockets fired at Israeli civilians. And this is an opportunity to say that our thoughts and prayers are with the people in Israel, including the wonderful people that will be presenting here today. And we hope that this situation will improve very shortly. It's important to say in this context that despite the situation, thanks to technology, Israel has been able to keep up with the challenges that we have in the neighborhood. For example, Iron Dome has been intercepting the great majority of rockets that are fired at the civilian population in Israel. So if it wasn't for technology, the situation would be much worse. And if it wasn't for technology that we have in Israel and the level of digitalization, we wouldn't be able to so quickly vaccinate the majority of the population, bringing Israel to a situation where it's, we can say, almost post-corona. So we're very happy about that. That shows us the importance of adapting technology and adapting innovation, and also of bilateral collaboration, which is why we are here. So on that note, thank you again for all the Israeli companies presenting today, and the organizers, AddValue, and especially the Japanese attendees that are with us today. Domo arigatou gozaimasu.
ありがとうございました。最初のプレゼンは Firefly Migration 社のレガシーアップグレードによって推進されるデジタルトランスフォーメーション。スピーカーは Sales and Customer Success 副社長のデイビッド・グリーンフェルドさんと大規模アカウント担当副社長のカロライン・コンです。お願いします。デイビッド・カロライン。
Good morning, everybody. We're happy to be here. I'm just going to share my presentation. My name is David. I'm the VP Sales of Firefly, and Caroline here with me is going to help me with this presentation. She's actually in charge of the large customers and especially Japan. So let me please share my screen. One second, please. One second, I will do it. Technology.
You can start.
Okay. Do you see my screen?
Not yet.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Click just David. Click on the right arrow on your mouse and hide presenter view, please.
Okay. Now, can you see my screen?
Yeah, but we see the other slides too. So just click on the right hand of your mouse and click on hide presenter view.
Is it okay now?
No, not yet. I'll stop your sharing and do it again. That's okay.
Sorry, we'll do it again. I hope it works.
Open your presentation first and then share your screen.
Yeah, but the presentation is on. I've opened it. Sorry for the delay. Is it okay now? Do you see my screen?
Now it's okay.
Okay, sorry. So again, my name is David. Besides me is Ms. Caroline. She's going to help me with the presentation. And what we are going to talk about today is actually how Firefly supports all these transactions in the IT world today. Firefly actually today is what we're going to talk about is how the reality of the IT today is supported by Firefly. The potential solutions, all these things that are being influenced, let's say, by the coronavirus. People are starting working from home. People are starting, they need all this business way of doing things from far away, not only from the office, like banking, like finance, like commercial, buying things, and all these logistics and everything else. Now, Firefly is supporting all these things by making sure that everything was invested in all these applications that were used to be to be handled on the previous days are going to serve all those customers as they did before. We need to adapt quickly to these changes. We need to make sure that everything is going as it was before. We need to make sure that everything is working as it did, and all these advantages invested for hundreds of man hours, thousands of man hours by developing and supporting and all these new applications will give the same advantage to the customers. Now, we need to do that in minimum risk. We need to do that in minimum disruption to the work, and we need to do that as as smooth as can be. Now, there are several options to do that. Let's say there are several options to do that. One of them is rewriting everything from scratch. The other one is using one of the packages supporting your needs. And the third one is Firefly. Now, if you're gonna rewrite everything from scratch, there are the risks like long project. You know how you start, don't know how when you finish. Now, if you have a budget, you know how you start, the budget is starting, but you don't know how the budget is going to end. You have always, when you start the project, you have the first needs, but when you start talking about the new project, the new rewrite, you'll see that you have new requests from your customers, from your users, and the project will start not on the date it was supposed to, but much later. Now, the user training, of course, is one of the worst problems, because after you finish, let's say that you finished all this development in the new application, you'll have to train the users, and some of them will be against it. Some of them will not like the new application, so you have a lot of problems, and this is only a fraction of the problems we're talking about. Now, let's say that you buy a new package, let's say that you start with a new package, the problem is that the previous application you used to have was supporting exactly your needs. It was quite pinpoint to the needs of your customers, of your users. So if you buy off-the-shelf project application, you'll have to adjust it. You'll have to make sure that everything will adapt to your needs. This is a lot of investment, long time. It will cost much more than you anticipated. And finally, it doesn't mean that you'll have what you want. Now, Firefly comes with its values to answer all these risks. What we are doing actually is making sure that the customers after the conversion will have their application with the advantages exactly to what they need, because all these man hours of thousands or hundreds of man hours invested in the previous application will keep serve the customers, they will be able to use it, but with a great advantage of it will cost, as you know, a fixed price. You'll know how you start and when you finish. The users will see the same application. They will not need any training. And as soon as the conversion is finished, you'll be able to start working without any delay. The only thing is it will probably work faster and much more smoother. Now, one second. Okay. Okay.
Thank you, David. So Firefly is doing that since 15 years and continuously improving the conversion engine which supports the application migration. So far, as of today, we have migrated over 1,000 applications over all 5 continents worldwide. In all the organizations we meet, a team of very highly efficient developers are developing and maintaining the application with a high productivity. So as part of the project, we train these developers with their unique business knowledge to be as efficient in .NET as they were in Magic. Also, non-Magic developers can also be trained. And we have done this successfully for over 450 Magic developers all around the world. Now, the value you get with Firefly, you are now in a standard object-oriented language, C# with .NET framework. Firefly guarantees contractually that the migrated application will have the same performance or better after the migration. During the whole project, the business continued to work without any interruption, no code freeze during the project, and no impact on the operations. At the end of the project, you get the source code and you are fully independent. After the migration, the end user will recognize their application and will not need any training. They will continue business as usual. The developers in .NET will be able to provide easily additional enhancement to the end users, and the end user will then be more autonomous and get a lot of improvements to use daily in their operations.
We're going to talk about a little bit about our customers, because what we wanted to do is just to emphasize a bit about the fact that Firefly is not about vertical, is not about a line of business, is not about working with the same company or some kind of unique companies. Firefly supports and can be able to convert your applications, either your financial application, either your logistics, your software company, whatever company you are. So what we can do, what I wanted to show you here is some of our clients. Let's say like GE Capital is like a huge company with 6,000 users converted, financial, Sky News, Industrios here. Industrios is like a software house with hundreds of users, HR companies, and so forth. TTB, Tulsa Tube Bendings from the States, is like an industrial company. If you have Magic, we can convert it. Now, I'd like to say a few words about GE Capital. GE Capital is one of the largest application conversions we've done. 6,000 users, spreads in several countries. and the benefit that this company had from converting this application was enormous. After they moved from the Magic in a project duration of 12 months, once they were in .NET, the users felt huge improvement in their way day-to-day work. Some of the reports were, let's say, day-to-day reports were about 30 to 50% quicker without any tuning, only from conversion itself. Now, some of the reports and screens were much faster. Now, part of this conversion, they moved away from a huge computer AS400 and complex database to much simpler architecture with SQL, and they even invited us to the ceremony where they did it. One more company I want to talk about is Industrios. Industrios, after converting the Magic application to .NET, and it was actually a huge application also, they succeeded on selling the company to another company. This transaction couldn't be made if they were remained in Magic. No one wanted to deal with this kind of software only after conversion to .NET. So this was one of the best deals he did in his life, the owner of the company. I want to talk a little bit about how the project is to be, after we sign the contract and everything is going smooth. I'd like to talk how the project is done. I will do it fast because it's a little bit complicated, but I'll do it as fast as I can. Now, after we sign the contract, we are signing a server especially for the customer. We are, starting sending the first converted application to the customer. The customer starts, testing it. The only test they are doing is to see if there's a difference between the Magic application and the .NET application. They send us any issue, they report us any issue if necessary. And then what we do is we fix our Firefly engine. We never fix the Magic code. This gives us three benefits. One is if someone else encountered some kind of a bug like this, you won't find it at your application conversion. And if this bug is, in other places of your application, it will not appear again. And because we're not touching your code, you can continue supporting your own application Magic. You do not have to fix. You don't have to freeze your maintenance. You can continue supporting your customers. And this is done until we don't find any more bugs, any more differences between the Magic and the .NET. This time, at this point, what we are suggesting is, we are trying to handle the risk. We do not believe in a big bang, but gradual rollout. What we mean is you give the first one, the second one, the third one of the users to use the converted application. If everything is okay, you give it to everybody and everything is okay. During this phase, we start the training and we're making sure that the training is as close as possible to the time you're taking ownership on your own code so you can maintain it. On this point, you start developing in .NET and you don't have to pay any more licenses, or you're not related to anyone. You don't depend on yourself. And all these .NET developers that are, all over the place, and you can't find them everywhere. I hope it was, understood because I moved very fast on that. Firefly supports all these versions. Magic from 7.5.9, Unipass, and we can of course support database conversions, and we can make sure that everything is afterwards finished as we should. Now, there are several magic applications with older versions. We can support it, but it needs, special attention, but we can do it. I hope you enjoyed it. We try to do it as fast as possible. There are a lot more information we can give, but I hope you learned something. I hope that you understood everything, and if you have any more questions, we'll be happy to answer later. Thank you very much. Yuval?
Yes. Okay. Let's move on to the next speaker. 次のプレゼンは、プレコグナイズ社長のヘンリッチ・ベンスキさん。予知保全、プロセス産業で学んだ教訓。ヘン、בבקשה.
Thank you, Yuval, and thank you all for joining. I'm Chen Lichevsky, CEO of Recognize. Let me just quickly share my screen. Okay, and I hope you all see it. If not, just let me know. I'm going to present here our SAMGuard application. Just a word about us. SAMGuard is produced by Recognize. It's human-enhanced machine learning. I'll talk later on what is human-enhanced machine learning and what it means. We are today part of a larger corporation, so we are part of SAMSON AG. We're actually bringing together a combination of Israeli innovation, as was mentioned before, together with the German engineering and 112 years of experience in this field, and we're merging it into the best application specifically for the process industry. So we're very, very focused on chemical, petrochemical, oil and gas, cement, and other related process industries. These industries have a very specific characteristics in the area of predictive maintenance and failures. Our customers are worldwide, starting from Asia, US, Taiwan, and so on. I'm sure that if you belong to any of these industries, you're familiar with those names. Now, before I'll start talking, I would like to show you a short introduction clip that will kind of give you an idea in a very simple way of what we are doing.
これはアレックス。この工場のプロセスエンジニアです。彼女はこの工場で楽しく働いています。すべては順調に働いているようです。でも、アレックスにはプロセスや装置の部品の奥深くで進む想定外のトラブルは見えていません。数日後に彼女が気づくときにはもう手遅れになっているでしょう。小さな問題が複雑で高コストなトラブルに発展し、生産ロスや工場の完全なシャットダウンを引き起こす可能性もあります。今やアレックスは最悪の悪夢を目の当たりにしています。でも、もしアレックスにそんな恐ろしい未来をあらかじめ阻止できる方法があったらどうでしょう。もし被害や生産停止などの問題を事前に検知できたとしたら、サムガードならできます。この独自の人間強化型の機械学習ソリューションがあなたの工場でできることを詳しく見ていきましょう。プロセス産業では全く同じトラブルが繰り返されることはないため、事前の予測は不可能です。アレックスには次のトラブルがどこから来るか予想できません。幸いなことにサムガードはプラント全体を監視して人間が見逃してしまうような発生したばかりの問題を検出し防止することが可能です。静的機器や回転機器の故障からプロセスの逸脱まであらゆる問題をアレックスに警告します。そのためどんなトラブルでも手に負えなくなる前に早期に対処できます。特許を取得した当社の人間強化型の機械学習は既存のプラントの運転データとその構造やプロセスを組み合わせることでコンテキストを追加し独自の予測監視ソリューションを実現します。これによりサムガードは1日わずか5回程度の正確で実用的な警告を出すことから煩わしいアラートやその結果として生じるアラート疲れを解消できます。 このような的を絞った早期警報により、常に火消しに走り回るのではなく、先手を打って行動できるようになります。サムガードは非常に高度な技術を利用していますが、特別な訓練を受けなくても簡単に実装して使用することができます。このパワフルなツールはわずか2週間で稼働を開始し、データを分析し、自重的なアラートを生成することで、あなたの工場でもタイムリーな対応を可能にします。サムガードは工場全体を監視し、リアルタイムの対応が必要になる問題を事前に警告します。これにより、問題の特定に必要な情報が得られるため、些細な事故が深刻な問題に発展する前に対策を講じることができます。デジタルツールのサムガードを使用すれば、オペレーショナルエクセレントに向けた大きな一歩を踏み出し、工場の最高の能力を引き出すことができます。これでアレックスも安眠できます。
Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this short clip. Now let's get into a little bit into the details and understand what's happening behind the scenes. When we're talking about predictive maintenance, the idea is very clear. Okay, when something is failing, when a part is failing in a plant, it usually starts with very small signs. Very small, at the beginning, it's only small temperature things, and then lubrication, and then it's starting to shake and the vibration are growing, and then you can hear it, smell it, and eventually, if nothing happened, then you can see the problem. Now, the cost is actually very much correlated to it, because if you catch it very early, then the cost of repair is very small. You can plan for it, and the availability of the plant remains untouched. Okay, so there is a lot of value in the ability to actually be able to identify those failures very early. And if we do that, we actually decrease our repair costs, our maintenance costs, and increase our availability. Now, when you look at the different instrumentation and different equipment on your plant, you would probably find from our experience in many plants is that your biggest equipment, the biggest rotating, most expensive, non-redundant equipment is already monitored somehow. Okay, the real thing is about those small equipment, unnoticed, those valves, small pumps, small compressors, heat exchanger here and there, all this kind of equipment, which is currently remains completely in the black, completely unmonitored. And this is actually the thing that creates most of the problems for process plants worldwide. And SAMGuard was made exactly for that. So we're not just monitoring the most expensive equipment, we're monitoring everything. The darkest corners of your plant, the things that nobody noticed. And these are exactly the things that will cause you most of your problems in the future. And if to give you a small example, this is an example from a mining rig in the middle of the sea. It's unmanned, so it's even harder to fix and monitor. And basically, what the software identified just based on the data. Remember, it's a few kilometers into the sea. The software identified based on the data that there is a problem there with a specific pump, an indication that there may be a leakage. Now, the process engineer decided in this case to send the team to actually check what's happening in the field. And then when they got there, when they got to the rig, what they found is this thing, and actually hear the voice. So just by looking at the data from kilometers away, the software was able to identify that there is this small leakage. And by the way, this small leakage, if continued, could actually harm and stop production on this mining rig. Okay, so we're able to detect very minor things just by looking at the data. Just another example, and this is, we're now talking about Israel, and we're talking about Haifa. And this is one of the chemical plants, which is very near to the city. And what we identified here is a methane leakage. Now, as you can understand, since it's very close to the city, this is a very important subject. But the takeaway that I want you to make from looking at this slide is not so much that we identified it, because this is what we do, is also the fact that although the data, and you see here trends of few sensors, although the data is very noisy, the software did not alert when there was nothing there. Okay, so we actually were able to differentiate between real alert and just noise that you don't want the operator to worry about. So if you take all these small things together, eventually you get to a situation where your maintenance cost is reducing and your availability is going up. And this is a slide from one of our customers in the cement industry that actually demonstrate how remarkable, how significant was the operation of SAMGuard in their plants. Now, if we look at the background, what is happening behind the scenes, we basically know that in any process plant that you have or you're related to, there are hundreds, thousands, and tens of thousands of sensors. Okay, the sensors are already there. The data is already there. It's being collected for years. In most cases, nobody is really doing much with this data. Now, when we are looking at those failures, those irritating failures, those failures that actually create all kind of, from big catastrophe to small maintenance events, those failures have usually small indications within the data. Okay, something was happening just before the big failure happened. Just like your light in your house is a little bit blinking before it completely burns. So there are small things in the data that actually indicate a potential problem in the future. Now, if we have a team in the plant, or you have a team in your plant, process engineers and so on. Now, if this team could look at all the thousands of sensors and look at each of them and apply what they know about the plant and look at the data, probably they would be able to identify those failures much earlier. The problem is that none of us and none of you is really able to look at thousands of sensors all the time and identify those small changes. And actually the data doesn't look as simple as you're seeing here with the trends. It actually looks more like this kind of data. Some sensors are up and down and some sensors in the background are more continuous. So the data is very, very noisy. So if we as humans could look at the data all the time and monitor it, we would probably do a very good job. The only problem is that we can't. As humans, we cannot look at thousands of sensors. We cannot look at complicated data. And this is exactly where AI, artificial intelligence, is coming to place. And this is exactly where SAMGuard is playing. Because the software doesn't take lunch break. It doesn't take vacations. It doesn't get tired over time. It's just getting better and better over time. So the software doesn't rest. It actually monitors all the tags all the time in order to identify those small changes before they actually happen. Now, I said earlier that when the process engineer is looking at the data, is actually applying some kind of knowledge. So the most important thing when you're talking about artificial intelligence in process plant is not just the data part. It's also the human intelligence, the knowledge that this engineer is applying when he's looking at the data. Now, we don't want just to take the data, analyze it, crunch it with the smart machine learning, and ignore this knowledge. To the contrary, the situation in process plants is different. We know what is the prior knowledge. We know how the plant is built, or you know how the plant is built. And this knowledge is actually exists in in diagrams, in the PNIDs, and so on. So the idea behind SAMGuard, and this is what differentiates us from any other competitor, is that we're actually taking this knowledge, not ignoring it, not saying everything is in the data, but actually taking this data from the PNIDs and the engineers, convert it into, through SAMGuard Studio, into a plant model, which provides us not all the knowledge that the process engineer knows, of course, but enough knowledge for the software to later differentiate between just noise in the data, like I showed earlier with the methane leakage, and real problems. So we take this knowledge from the PNIDs, convert it into a model, and then convert it into something which we call the AI causality graph. In the process plant, as it seems from the name, things are influencing each other. We try to capture this into a causality graph. And all this process that I'm showing you here, we worked very hard in order to make it very, very, very fast. So the end result is that we're combining this together with the machine learning in order to eventually provide you up to 5 alerts a day. And here I'm talking about a big refinery or a big olefin plant or a big cement plant and so on. Now, what we also learned, and with that I'll finish, is that implementing predictive maintenance is not just about technology. It's also about the cultural change. In order to help you in doing this cultural change, we actually established a network of experts. And this network of experts will eventually also get to Japan. Now it's in Israel, Germany, Taiwan. And what it does is it saves some of the time from your very or your process engineer and the other engineers in the plant are all very busy. They're doing their daily job. They're now 100% occupied. We're trying to implement predictive maintenance while not putting too much effort on their side. And what basically the network of experts is doing is that when the data is going into the machine learning, it doesn't go directly to the person at the end of the loop. It goes through our monitoring center, where engineers are looking at these alerts, qualifying them, finding the root cause, and then discussing them with the plant. We have found this to be very, very effective compared to just taking the software. You can, of course, implement the software only, but using predictive maintenance as a service is found to be a much more effective way in order to start. And eventually, hopefully, some of the bigger companies will actually create this kind of analytical center throughout by themselves after the first implementations. So with that, I would like to conclude. Remember, we're looking at thousands of sensors covering the entire plant. We're coming with very, very few alerts. We're offering this both as a software only for those of you who want it, but also as a kind of a service, analytical monitoring service, whether it's we guide you to create one service or we provide the service by ourselves. It is very fast to implement. The entire process that I showed is actually 1 to 2 weeks implementation. With that, I would turn back to Yuval if there are any questions.
Thank you, Chen. There was one question which you just answered. ありがとうございました。一つの質問は、実装はどんな具合かかりますかとありましたけれども、最後のスライドで回答いたしましたけれども、他の質問はなかったら、次のプレゼンは、トラペックス社のサイバーディセプション、非侵入型、正確、費用国家。スピーカーは、タルナガーさん、トラペックス社のアジアパシフィック、ヨーロッパ、中東、アフリカのセールスディレクターです。タルベバカシャ。
Hi, hello everybody. My name is Tal Nagar. I'm from the sales team at TrapX. Thank you all for joining. I want to share my screen and show you the presentation. Here it is. Great. So I want to introduce TrapX. And what we do at TRAPEX is we provide a cyber threat detection solution, which is achieved by employing the cyber deception concept. It's a very innovative solution. Sorry for that, and I want to show you how it works. But first, a few words about TRAPEX. The company was founded in 2012. We are a startup, but still a mature company with a mature product. We have global offices around the world, offices in the US, UK, Mexico, and Israel. We have a global partners around the world, including in Japan. The company is backed by several venture capitals, which are listed here. Companies like Intel Capital, BRM, IBEX, and others. And the most important thing in this slide for me is the fact that we have world-class customers, companies like eBay, IBM, Nomura from Japan, Procter & Gamble, ServiceNow, and many, many others. This is just a partial list. And this is just to show that we know at TRAPEX how to protect large organizations, complex organizations with diverse and, again, complex infrastructure. And I want to start by talking a little bit about the concept and about how we provide value we can provide value to your cybersecurity infrastructure. So the biggest challenge when you talk about threat detection or identifying threats inside the organization is the challenge of distinguishing between real users, legitimate workers in the organization, and hackers. Because hackers, their method is to disguise as legitimate users. Both legitimate users and hackers, they operate on the same platform, on the same plane, where a hacker tries to look like a user and the user is just fulfilling his work process in the network. And the standard way of identifying what transaction could be part of a hacking campaign is to constantly scan the network to look at each and every transaction. Well, just a second, sorry for that. Look at every and each transaction, analyze it, sometimes using very sophisticated algorithms, and deciding, hey, this is an anomaly, this might be part of a hacking campaign. Now, these are the methods that are mostly used today when we talk about threat detection, but those methods, although they are good and efficient, they have a few challenges that they bring with them, and those challenges burden the security team of the organization and makes their life a little bit harder than they should be. And I'm talking about challenges like the systems are not accurate. They have a lot of false positives. Not every identification of the system of an anomaly actually leads to detecting an alert. Sometimes it's just a normal anomaly that is part of the workflow. These systems are intrusive because you actually need to look at the actual data. You need to tap into the data of the organization to look at every and each transactions. Sometimes those transactions are sensitive and an organization would not like to share it with another system, although it's an on-prem solution. Those systems are hardware intensive because, again, they need to analyze a lot of information and they are complex both to implement and to operate. And we at TRAPEX, we want to offer an alternative. So what we're saying is that instead of scanning each transaction and doing the rigorous work of examining everything that is in the network, we build a shadow network that is composed of fake network elements. They look exactly like the real thing, but they are not actual network elements. The users of the organization are not exposed to those elements. They are present only to the hackers. So when a hacker comes into the network, he will go into the, at one point of the hacking campaign, he will go into the shadow network, he will touch one of the fake elements, and then it will be very, very easy for us to reveal him, to provide information about the attack, to identify that there is an attack first, to provide information about the attack, and to enable other systems to catch him and to actually close the case and shut down the hacker campaign. This method, new method of doing threat detection has no false positive alerts. When a hacker touches one of the fake elements, it's definitely a hacking campaign. It couldn't be a false alarm. The systems are not intrusive. They reside beside your network, and you don't need to share the network information with those systems. They have a small hardware footprint, and they are very simple both to implement and to operate. And let me tell you a little bit more of how this thing works. So if this would be a standard network with the endpoints, the workstation, the IoT devices like security cameras, printers, or other systems which are not actual computers, you have communication equipment, servers, databases, etc. We come to a network like that, and the first thing that we deploy is the traps. And the traps are fake attack surfaces that are camouflaged as real network-connected equipment. The traps, again, are visible to the hacker and not visible to the user. And the idea, again, is when a hacker comes in, it will see one of the traps. It would look for him like an attractive asset. It will try to ping it, to scan it, or to actually visit the asset. And then we immediately recognize that there's a hacker in the network. We know all of the information that is necessary to stop him, and we are able to stop the attack. These traps are very scalable. They are not based on real servers. They are emulations, and we can deploy up to 512 different traps in one single server. We have a diverse repository of traps that are ready to deploy. So you don't need to prepare anything. You just need to press a button and deploy the trap. We have traps that are IoT devices, like security cameras, like MRI machines if it's a hospital, like ATM machines if it's a bank, et cetera, et cetera. We have, of course, communication equipment, servers. We have special traps for the manufacturing domain, and we have special traps for Windows, for cloud extensions of your network. And those traps, emulator traps, are very, very reliable. They look exactly like the real thing, and they attract hackers and encourage them to start their campaign in a false, fake network equipment and not in a real network. In addition to the traps, we have another element that helps, quote unquote, the hacker reach our traps. These are the baits. And the baits are fake data and configuration on real endpoints that lure attackers, entice attackers to reach the traps. These are optional items, it's important to say. And also important to say that these elements are agentless and they are text-based, so they are not intrusive. Although they are required to be installed on existing hardware, they are, first of all, optional. The system can work without the baits, but if you want to enhance the capacity of the system and you install the baits, you have to understand that there's no intervention. It's not an intrusive element. It's a textual-based element, and does not actually interfere with the day-to-day work of the network. In addition, I have to just to give you an example of what I mean by baits. These baits could be SMB shares, could be RDP tokens, could be fake browsing history that is planted in the memory of the systems. So basically, if a hacker comes in, starts his campaign in a specific endpoint, he will see, as an example, an SMB share. He would regard this SMB share as an opportunity to laterally move inside the network to an attractive asset. And obviously, when he uses this hint, this token, he will eventually reach one of the traps and not one of the actual network elements that you want to protect. And this is the basic idea. I'm not going to get into the technical details, Obviously, if anyone is interested, you can contact me and we can arrange a more detailed technical overview. But just to give you a grasp, an example of how simple the system is. So if you look at the core elements that are needed to deploy a full system, we're talking about 2 servers. First one will be the admin console, obviously, to manage the system. And the second one would be in the bottom, the trap appliance, the server that contains up to 512 traps that can be deployed all over the organization from one single server. Very easy to implement. And this is, I think, very important when we talk about security systems that sometimes are very elaborate and very complicated. This one is very simple. You get the results immediately after the deployment. And we're talking about if it's a POC, it will take around 2 hours to deploy the system. If it's a real live system, we are talking about a day or 2, not more than that. And this is, I think, a great advantage over the alternatives of doing threat detection. In addition, we have 2 additional optional elements. In the left, you see the lures, the tokens that I have discussed earlier. Again, an optional item that entices the hacker to reach the traps. And on the right side, we also have a full server traps, the old traditional style honeypots, which are based on real servers. Sometimes they are required by customers, so we have developed them as well. But again, our core competence, our core strength is with the emulated traps, the scalable traps, the ones that you can, in a press of a button, deploy all over the organization with only the need for one single server. So again, to kind of sum the value that we believe can be achieved by choosing the deception technology to do threat detection. First thing, as I said, almost no false positives. Any trap interaction equals malicious activity. And this is a great advantage today. A lot of systems, they have a lot of false positives. It creates a lot of wasted time in the SOC and also what we call SOC fatigue. When you have an analyst that sees a lot of false positives, once you get a real alarm, it's not sure that he will be focused enough to recognize it's a real alarm because of the false positives that he has experienced before. This is a great advantage. Scalability, second advantage, again, 512 traps in the press of a button in one single server. Next item, system is non-intrusive. The tokens themselves, even then they are not intrusive and they are based on textual elements. Light hardware footprint and simple, very, very simple to install and operate. I urge anyone that is interested to call me and set up a demo, and you will see a demo or a POC, and you will see how easy it is to install the system. And this is basically what we are offering. This is the deception technology used to do threat detection. Just to share with you, because we don't have enough time for a real demo, I just want to share with you some screenshots of how the system looks. So the first one, sorry, I'll skip this one. The first one is this very interesting score table, active defense scoreboard, we call it. And after we deploy the traps, we run this process and we can determine and show the customer the different attacks that are protected by the different traps. So for each trap, the IPs on the left represent the traps. For each traps, we show exactly what type of attack we can defend with this specific trap. And that this way you can make sure that the combination of all of the traps that you deployed cover you from all of the different scenarios that are available for the hackers. So we not only deploy the traps, we make sure that those traps are efficient and that they protect your environment with this very innovative process of a simulation of an attack on the traps and a mapping of the exact attack scenarios that we can protect against. This is an example of how our admin console looks. Obviously, all of this information can be forwarded to the SOC, and there's no need to actually sit in front of our local consul, but still just to show you an example of how it looks and of how it provides you information about the different traps. Another view that is offered that also makes everything more simple and more visible and makes this solution a solution that does not require a very technical person to operate. This is the attack visualization that gives you an ability to see exactly where the attack is coming from and what are the elements that are attacked. So with that, people, I want to finalize. Thank you very much for joining. Again, this is a very short presentation that fits the time constraints, and I urge anyone that is interested to contact us and to get a full presentation and a full demonstration of how the system works and how efficient it could be in your organization. Thank you very much. Yuval, back to you.
Thank you, Tal, for a very nice presentation. 最後のプレゼンにメトリック社のフィンテックとデジタル部門のシニアソリューションアーキテクト、ヤエル・メイタ・レイさんは、コアとデジタルが出会う時の話に現場からの経験をお伝えします。ヤエル、בבקשה.
Hi everyone. I'm Yael. Thank you for the introduction. I'm a senior solution architect at Matrix, and I wanted to share with you a little bit about digital transformation and the connection to digital transformation and the core and mid systems of your organizations. As part of my job at Matrix is one of the largest integrators in Israel, and we work with over 10,000 employees and customers around the globe. And one of the things I do with our customers, especially working with the digital transformation projects, is actually to make sure not only that the technology works in the right direction, but also to make sure that the end result will meet the business and needs, and that the end result will be the thing that everyone were aspiring for. So I would like to start with sharing with you a little bit of what I've done in 2020. One of my main projects was actually working with one of our biggest healthcare providers' call centers. So in the 2020 COVID-19 area, we had a lot of challenges when we tried to work with a call center, because COVID-19 brought on a lot of new customers and a lot of new processes, and people didn't really know what to do. And at the beginning, when we handled the increased processes and customers in the call centers, we thought this is here for a week or two, or maybe a month or two, and it's a temporary situation. So we brought on board more CSRs and just tried to handle stuff when rapidly everything changed and evolved. And after around 2 months, we knew that this is here to stay for a long term. So we sat with the VP of service, and she told us that the waiting time in the call center has increased to over an hour waiting time. And she said basically that there's no choice and we need a digital solution, and we need one fast. So we took all the teams and thought about how can it be done. And the core people, they said, listen, we need up to 6 weeks to make it work and expose all of the services you need to be able to process a request in a digital way. This is the time frame we need. And the CRM people say they needed less time, but still they need time. So they wanted to have 3 weeks. And the digital team, they have this great tool for a digital request. They said, let me have 1 week and we can automate the request part in mobile and on the website. And we can complete it in 1 week. And we thought about it, and it was a mess, an hour and a half waiting time. We said, okay, let's start with the digital. Maybe if we start here and give the customers a digital request option, it will decrease the waiting time, and at least we can have a little bit of time to work on the other subjects. And this is what we did. After a little bit more than a week, it took us a week and a half, but we took our time and we had a full-blown digital request for the mobile and for the website, access for all of the customers. Customers started to use it, and we thought this will decrease the waiting time and enable us slowly to get the time we needed to a full automation. And let me tell you, we were so wrong. Not only did it not decrease the waiting time, but waiting time actually increased in 20%, because the process time needed to process the request didn't change because we didn't automate, not the CRM part and not the core part. So CSRs that handled the request in the digital queue still needed the time to manually process everything. And they handled the digital queue, so there were less CSRs answering the phone. And you'd think it should have stayed the same because we have a certain amount of customers that are not calling. But what happened is that customers, after they used it digital, and they didn't get the answer right away because they had a manual process, they called the call center and they asked them, why didn't I get the answer for my digital? So the amount of phone calls didn't decrease. It even increased because you had less people handling it and more people calling, and calling more than once to ask, what about my request? So that was the situation. And we saw that only after we finished 80% of our automating the whole process, the entire process, this is when the waiting time actually started to increase and we started to get results from the digital transformation we tried to do. So our number one challenge at that point, and I think nowadays when digital tools are out there, became not only to digital transformation the outside, but also connecting the core and the mid systems and automate end-to-end digital solutions so that the time to market that we can give our customers, our end users, for a new end-to-end process will give the business what they need and also when they need it. And it's not a matter of if we need to do it. I think nowadays we know that digital cannot stand alone and not be connected. But now we're talking about how can it be done, because some of our core and legacy systems are not ready to be exposed to the outside. And sometimes we need to look at the big picture and try to re-architect or rebuild some of our core and some of our processes in order to get that result. So I want to look with you briefly for this session on how can it be done. So we have two main phases to make the end-to-end automation complete. And the first one is to build it. And when we build it, we need to connect the core to the digital in a smart way. So we start with getting the core ready to be exposed. And sometimes the core is already ready and you can check that as completed and move on, but sometimes it's not. So we need to get the core ready. After that, we want to expose it and make it accessible. And then at the end, it is ready to be connected and to be building the end-to-end processes with the digital. And let's try and start with getting it ready. So getting it ready can go to 3 directions. Sometimes you can combine both, 2 or 3 of them, but mainly you have 3 directions. You either upgrade your environment or your core. If it's the infrastructure or operation system, think that when you need to expose a legacy or a core system, you actually have more users, but a vast amount of users. So if I have 6,000 users on my core system now, and I want to expose it to the digital process, maybe I have millions of requests and transactions that will start going my way. So maybe I need more infrastructure or hardware, or maybe I need to take it out to the cloud. So this is one thing we need to think about. The other thing is to see if we maybe want to replace the product, maybe rewrite some models. Maybe there are parts of the core or the legacy that are ready to be technology upgraded by replacing parts of it. And the third one is conversion. As you heard at the beginning with Firefly, we have conversion engines that allows us for some technologies to take them to the next level with a high level of automation and low risk, and get the core ready for the digital transformation. So if with Firefly, you can take your magic core system or legacy system and upgrade it to .NET and then make it cloud ready and digital ready. You have conversion engines that can take mainframe core from COBOL to Java, and you have a lot of engines that will take you to the next level, which makes it easier if it's automated and with low risk. After we've done that, as I said, we now need to get to the other part and expose, wrap, and connect everything to the digital. Exposing is easy once you got the core ready. You can either expose by web services or microservices and wrap up functionalities. And sometimes you just take the data out to a central data, like an ODS or a CDS, a data area that allows digital solutions to take your data and use them, like SAMGuard with the AI. Not always you'll need to connect it to the core data, but you can create a central ODS and have the solutions look at that area and not directly to the core. And then another thing you can do after you expose, you can wrap up full processes with new modern tools like RPA, like workflows, like low-code solutions. These tools will help you manage the processes and easily maintain them without touching the core all the time. And then when you connect the digital and you want to create an end-to-end process, you connect it to the wrapping area, and this area is more adaptable and it can take on rapid changes, and you leave the core a little bit more pure and a little less touched. And then you can really get the digital end-to-end process with rapid changes on time and in a short time to market. Now, the second thing is once we've had it and it's all connected, we need to keep the connection alive. Because if you remember at the beginning, the thing wasn't that we couldn't give the VP of service her request when she wanted a digital solution. The problem was the time frame, because the digital team can actually do it fast, but the core is always more complex. So if we always remember to look at the big picture and not forget the digital side on the other end when we're changing stuff in the core or in the mid system, we will always be ready for their requests. So always plan, execute, and maintain the entire end-to-end process when you're changing something or adding something to your core. And then you know that when a new request comes from the digital side, you're already ready for it. And then the digital can take the 1 week they need to just plug it in, make their end of the result, and have an end-to-end process in 1 week and not in 6, because you've already done your 6 weeks in the beginning when you made the change or planned the process. And that's it for my session. And thank you again for having me. I hope this session will help. And if you can take one thing from it, is that when you plan your digital transformation and you want to meet it, you need to plan it end to end and take the core and legacy with you. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Yael. じゃあ、今日のセミナーに出席をいただき誠にありがとうございました。各企業のプレゼンのリンクをまたおメールに追加いたしますけれども、もっと詳しい資料をもらう希望がありましたら、または何か質問がありましたら、私にごメールにお送りになりましたらとお願い申し上げます。よろしくお願いいたします。